I mean, it was a combination of Italians, Germans. I mean, different things have been floating around as to who was involved. I remember Hugo Chavez and a Venezuelan. She has an affidavit from somebody who says they wrote a software in. It's something with the Philippines, and just all over the radar. I thought the Dominion stuff was, I never saw any evidence whatsoever to sustain those allegations. What they were proposing, I thought was nuts. And the theory was also completely nuts, right?
That's Trump White House lawyer Eric Hirschman, part of his deposition testimony to the January 6th investigation. You can tell he's a Trump lawyer because he's got a baseball bat on the wall behind him that says justice on it. That's exactly the kind of hot sauce Trump likes in a lawyer, right? But in this case, he's not defending Trump anymore. He's not saying, impeach Trump. No, go back in time and impeach Obama. This time, he's taking apart what he depicts to the January 6th investigators as just the stupidity in his characterization of some of the far-fetched claims of supposed fraud that the president wanted to use as the excuse for overthrowing the U.S. government. I mean, that testimony that we just saw there, that I just played here moments ago, we saw that testimony from him before today. But then this evening, the January 6th investigators released a new taped statement from Republican Vice Chair Liz Cheney. And she included at the end of her statement something else from Trump lawyer Eric Hirschman to get us ready for what's coming next from the investigation's next hearing.
In our next hearing on Thursday, the Select Committee will examine President Trump's relentless effort on January 6th and in the days beforehand to pressure Vice President Pence to refuse to count lawful electoral votes. As a federal judge has indicated, this likely violated 2 federal criminal statutes. President Trump had no factual basis for what he was doing, and he had been told it was illegal. Despite this, President Trump plotted with a lawyer named John Eastman and others to overturn the outcome of the election on January 6th. To give you a sense of the gravity of these issues, here is a clip of one of President Trump's own White House lawyers, Eric Hirschman, who talked to Mr. Eastman the day after January 6th.
It was the day after. Eastman, I don't remember why he called me. Or he texted me or called me, wanted to talk with me, and he said he couldn't reach others. And he started to ask me about something dealing with Georgia and preserving something potentially for appeal. And I said to him, are you out of your effing mind? Right? I said, I only want to hear 2 words coming out of your mouth from now on. Orderly transition. And I screamed, I said, I don't want to hear any other effing words coming out of your mouth, no matter what, other than orderly transition. Repeat those words to me. And I screamed that. Eventually he said, orderly transition. I said, good, John. Now I'm going to give you the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it. And then I hung up on him.
That was released tonight by the January 6th investigation. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it. And then I hung up on him. This is the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Note to self. You like to hire bombastic lawyers who talk like this when they defend you? Well, they're also going to talk like that when they decide they're not going to defend you anymore, because now they've come to believe you're part of a criminal enterprise and they're willing to testify about that under oath. The substance of what Mr. Hirschman is sort of blustering at here, though, with the bat over his shoulder to, send home the point. The substance of what he's blustering at is a real thing. I mean, John Eastman was another of this illustrious pantheon of Trump lawyers. He really knows how to pick them. And Eastman has been litigating in federal court against subpoenas that he's received from the January 6th investigation. And he has said in his litigation that he was acting as an attorney to President Trump. And there's such a thing as attorney-client privilege. That's a real thing. It says prosecutors basically aren't allowed to see communications that happen between a person and their lawyer. A person is entitled to confidential legal advice that you can keep secret from the government, even in the face of a subpoena. That said, the attorney-client privilege is not limitless. And in the case of Trump and this lawyer, John Eastman, in the litigation where Eastman's trying to keep his communications and his documents secret, keep them away from investigators, a federal judge has now ruled twice in recent weeks that Eastman actually has to hand over these communications and documents to the investigation, even though he was acting as Trump's lawyer. Because even though there is such a thing as attorney-client privilege, you can't use it to cover up a crime. You can't use it to keep secret the evidence that a lawyer and a client were actually planning crimes together. And a judge has ruled already that Trump and Eastman were making forth with the criming. and therefore, Eastman has to hand over his documents and communications because there is a crime fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege. The judge believes that that is likely implicated in this case, that they were plotting a crime together, and therefore his documents and communications have to be handed over to the investigation. And that is a very substantive thing for a federal judge to conclude. And that is why Eric Hirschman, in classic Trump lawyer language, told the other Trump lawyer, John Eastman, that he was going to give him the best free legal advice you're ever getting in your life. Get a great effing criminal defense lawyer. You're going to need it. And then I hung up. That's why you're getting that between Trump lawyers. And that also is what Liz Cheney was getting at in this little part of her intro there, in this specific part of it.
President Trump's relentless effort on January 6th and in the days beforehand to pressure Vice President Pence to refuse to count lawful electoral votes. As a federal judge has indicated, this likely violated 2 federal criminal statutes.
Trump's effort on January 6th and the days beforehand to pressure Vice President Pence that he should refuse to count the electoral votes likely violated 2 federal criminal statutes. That is Liz Cheney saying that per a federal judge's ruling, President Trump and his lawyer, John Eastman, likely violated 2 federal laws when they pressured Mike Pence the way that they did. And what she's specifically describing, you can check it in the judge's ruling, are these 2 federal statutes, 18 U.S. Code Section 1512C and 18 U.S. Code Section 371. In plain English, that's obstruction of an official proceeding, and it's conspiracy to defraud the United States. And, you know, there's been all this talk in the last, I hate people in the media doing media criticism, but I'm just going to say this because I feel like this is an issue that kind of needs a little bit of a fence put around it. It's kind of getting blown up into a bigger deal than it actually is. There's been all this talk over the past few months, but particularly in the past couple of days, about whether or not the January 6th investigation, at the end of their investigation, whether they're going to make formal referrals to the U.S. Department of Justice about prosecuting crimes that the investigation has turned up. There's all this focus on whether or not all the members of the committee feel the same way about that issue, what they've said about whether they're going to issue criminal referrals or whether they're not going to issue criminal referrals. Honestly, it's kind of moot. I mean, here tonight, in this video released on Twitter, Congresswoman Liz Cheney is making criminal referrals, right? I mean, laying out the evidence. The committee, the investigation has been laying out the evidence that they have found of potential crimes. They have named the federal statutes they believe were violated, and they have named the people who they say did it. I mean, that's a criminal referral. Whether or not you write it down or you say it in a video that's posted online from the official Twitter account of the January 6th investigation, that's it. I mean, what else do you want? This is the January 6th investigators serving the volleyball over the net to federal prosecutors.